Yeah, it was a total accident. We accidentally just bumped into your MQ-9. Too many shots of vodka. Sorry about that. Won't happen again. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a Russian Su-27 accidentally bumping into an MQ-9 Reaper/Predator drone that happened over the Black Sea. And we're just going to discuss how that went down, how it maybe wasn't an accident. We'll dive into that a little bit as well, and some precedents. If you stay at the very end of the video, I'll give you some historical precedents that happened in China that Russia is basically using the playbook from. So all that and more coming up. Before we get going, please subscribe, dominate that like button. Every time you do that, an MQ-9 actually reverses the tables and shoots down a Su-27. No big deal. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Let's dive in. So Russian Su-27 fighter jet, flight of 2, were up there intercepting an MQ-9 doing a routine mission over the Black Sea. Now, this is something that goes on all the time, but it's worth saying since the war in Ukraine has heated up as of late, the reconnaissance surveillance missions have heated up as well. So there's more of these drones out there operating over the Black Sea. And you can bet that Russia has been watching that. They're seeing the uptick in these drones. So most likely they've been intercepting these for a while, but finally they're essentially basically giving the big middle finger to the United States, saying, hey, no, don't do this anymore, or you know what, we're gonna bully you around and see what your response is. Most of it is the response. But you know those big #1 fan things that people wear on their hands during basketball games? They're doing that, except with the middle finger extended, because they're basically seeing our resolve. They're seeing what the United States will do. They're poking the eagle, and they're trying to see, all right, hey, here we are, basically shooting down. They didn't shoot anything at it, but we're taking down one of your reconnaissance drones. What are you gonna do about it? We're testing your response. So it's on the United States now to respond and see, and Russia's basically like, well, we don't think you're gonna do anything back, so we're gonna take the risk and do this, which also brings into question that there could be the intention to grab this thing. There could be the intention to try to pick up this drone, but more on that in a minute. The US has come out and said that the intercepting of this particular MQ-9 was reckless. There's actually reports coming back, and I'm sure there's footage of this as well that won't be released due to classification issues, but there's reports that the Su-27s actually dumped gas on the MQ-9. Sorry about that. Total accident. Just spraying gas all over you. Didn't mean to do that. So it just shows that they were up there doing whatever they could to take this thing down. And again, it's the big middle finger to the US saying, like, we don't want you in Ukraine. We don't want you passing all these aid packages. We don't want you sending weapons or fighter jets over to Ukraine. And this is just a statement that they're making on an international stage where they can get noticed. The MQ-9 was operating routinely in that airspace. They were collecting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and that's what they've been doing for a while. But Russia is essentially sick of that, so that's why they sent up these 2 Su-27s to intercept this MQ-9. And it's worth noting that, yeah, even though they didn't shoot anything at it, taking down an MQ-9 is not going to be incredibly difficult. Actually, a quick story, when I was flying the F-15E, one of my flight mates in Afghanistan had shot down an MQ-9 that had gone lost link. So the thing was just flying around, and they basically just took it down with an AIM-9X Sidewinder. We've heard a lot about that AIM-9X Sidewinder recently, but they took it down with that so that it wouldn't just keep flying without any connection to the controller. So in this situation, they chose not to shoot anything at this, even though they could have. They could have shot a heat-seeking weapon at this MQ-9 and taken it down relatively easy. But the big thing with not shooting at it is deniability. Plausible deniability, and that's exactly what you want to have if you're Russia right now, because you don't want to show your cards. You don't want to just put your cards out for Uncle Sam to see. You want to be able to be like, oh, that was an accident. We didn't have enough shots of vodka, so the pilots were a little shaky, so we accidentally rammed into the MQ-9. So when it comes to plausible deniability, shooting a weapon would totally remove all of that, right? So if they shot a heat-seeking weapon or the gun at this MQ-9, then it's obviously just an international incident, and who knows what the response would be, but maybe it would be a little more severe than having the deniability of, oh yeah, we accidentally just bumped into this thing as we were doing a rejoin on it. Now don't get me wrong, there's footage out there of crazy Russian rejoins that are reckless and unsafe. Again, they probably didn't have enough shots of vodka during those flights. But at the end of the day, taking down something that is focused on intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance is only in the interest, it's in the best interest of Russia at this point, obviously. So the way that that could happen, if they bump into it with the pylon on the Su-27, they could basically fly up underneath this thing in a formation position and then just slightly increase their altitude until the pylon, which is that front thing on the wing, which looks like a missile. Sometimes there's missiles attached to them, but not all the time. They're just a pylon that missiles can be attached to. Now that's not gonna hurt any of the flight characteristics of the aircraft. Like if that thing gets ripped off, ask me how I know that. May have happened to the Thunderbirds a few times with F-16s that accidentally bumped into each other during maneuvers, but that missile rail isn't really structurally attached to something that's gonna rip the wing off or something like that. That missile rail itself is gonna fly off and that's gonna be gone. See ya! But the wing itself is not gonna be incredibly damaged, maybe a few scratches here and there. They're relaying information on their position. Maybe there's a ship out there that can pick this thing up so that Russia can get data from this thing. But at the end of the day, all that they would need to do is just increase their altitude from underneath this with their wing, with that pylon just behind that propeller, and then just push forward slightly until that pylon hits the propeller, and then that's gonna take down that MQ-9. They could have used the front of the jet as well, which is gonna damage the pitot tube. That's gonna be a lot more damage to the Su-27. And it was confirmed that the Su-27 that bumped into that MQ-9 did land afterwards. And it's not clear yet whether the MQ-9 was completely disabled by getting hit by that Su-27 or if the Pentagon just decided to take it down over an area where the Russians couldn't get to it, because maybe if the thing was still gliding or still continuing to produce a little bit of power, then it might glide into areas where then Russia could definitely get their hands on it. So the Pentagon at that point is making a decision. They're making a gut check call. Should we just take this thing down where it's at right now? And the US is saying, look, this was an international airspace. We don't need to check and confirm with you to fly out here. But Russia is just kind of being like, oh, well, we're not sure what happened. No big deal. I mean, didn't mean to bump into you. Quick highlight on those Reapers. They've got a ton of communications equipment inside of them. They can actually be armed as well. They can fly up to 50,000 feet. They're relatively slow moving, fly distances of up to 1,100 miles, so they're a super capable platform. And then Moscow is gonna put out a release and they're gonna say, as a result of sharp maneuvering, the MQ-9 unmanned aerial vehicle went into an uncontrolled flight with a loss of altitude and collided with the water's surface. That's from the Russian Defense Ministry. And of course they're gonna say that. They're gonna say the thing just spiraled out of control. It just happened to spiral out of control when the Su-27s were there to watch it happen. So you made it to the end of the video, guys. Now we're gonna talk about some historical precedents, and that is gonna be with a P-3 that was taken down in China. It was actually taken down around the Hainan Islands in China. Now the P-3 at the time was one of the most advanced sensor aircraft, and you can bet that China knew that. The P-3 is operating roughly 70 nautical miles away from that Chinese island when it was intercepted by J-8s. It was intercepted by two J-8s. One of those J-8s actually hit the P-3 and almost took the P-3 out of the sky. The P-3 was so badly damaged that they had to land immediately at Hainan Island, basically a Chinese airbase without permission, you know, is what China's gonna say. That J-8 actually crashed. The pilot, whether he tried to eject or not, no one knows, disappeared and was never found again. But the big thing there is China knew that if they were able to ram that P-3 and take it down, then there was a good chance they were gonna get their hands on whatever sensors were inside of it, and they could use that technology to build their own intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platforms, which you can bet that they did. The US ended up getting that jet back eventually, and luckily none of the crew on board were hurt. They were all interrogated by China and then eventually released. But as you can see, the precedence has been set. If you bump into an aircraft like that, there's plausible deniability. Whoops, didn't mean to bump into that P-3 and didn't mean to steal all of the secrets on board. But ultimately, I think Russia's taken a note out of that playbook, and I think we'll probably see more of this as things continue to progress and as Russia's frustration grows with the war in Ukraine. Thanks so much for being here, my friends. Really glad that you're here to check out this video. The best compliment you can give me is just watch another video. It would mean a lot. Those will pop up right here. Please take a second and check those out. Thanks so much for being here. Most of all, have a great day.